My daughter told me she wouldn't contact me when she go to college. All right, I'd give her a lesson called When You Make Adult Decisions and Live with Adult Consequences. A bit of background. I, 45F, am a single mom of 2 kids, Ella, 18F, and Jake, 16M. My husband died when the kids were young, and I've worked extremely hard to support them both emotionally and financially. My husband left behind a life insurance policy, and I've been saving part of that money for their college education. Since she was a little girl, Ella has always dreamed of going to a prestigious college. We've had many talks about how important education is, and I made sure she knew that the fund I was building for her and Jake was specifically for their education. I wasn't able to afford luxuries like vacations or new cars, but I wanted to make sure they wouldn't be burdened with student loans. Recently, though, things have become strained with Ella. She started dating a guy named Matt, 19M, a few months ago, and I feel like her personality has completely changed since. She's become distant, rude, and dismissive of anything I say. She's said hurtful things like I smother her, or treat her like a child. I've tried giving her space, but last week, during a particularly bad argument, she said she was going no contact with me once she went to college and would never look back. I was devastated. After everything I sacrificed, to hear that she'd cut me out was heartbreaking. I didn't want to react out of emotion, so I waited a few days to cool off, but eventually, I made the decision that if she truly wanted nothing to do with me, then I wasn't going to fund her education. I told her if she's planning to go no contact with me after college, she should consider her fund off the table, and I'd split it between Jake and myself for other things. She exploded, calling me vindictive, manipulative, and selfish. She thinks I'm trying to control her by dangling the money over her head. I've talked to a few friends about this, and reactions have been mixed. Some say I'm within my rights because the money is mine and I can do with it what I see fit. Others say that I'm punishing her for her feelings and that I'm being controlling by using the money as leverage. So, AITA for taking back my daughter's college fund after she said she was going no contact with me. Update. First of all, I want to thank everyone who gave advice and genuinely tried to help. After going through the comments, I think the best thing I can do is try to talk things out with Ella. She's my daughter, and she always will be, and I will always be there for her if she wants me to. As for the money, I'm going to hold on to it for now until I have cleared up whether she is being abused or influenced by her boyfriend, but I won't spend it on Jake or myself. To those saying I must be abusive or controlling, I want to make it clear that I've never used the college fund to try to control her. The idea of withholding the money didn't even come up until she said she wanted to go no contact. Relevant comments. Commenter 1 has 10,000 upvotes. There are 2 big questions here. 1. Is it the new boyfriend's influence? Or 2. Is there an ongoing underlying issue with you and your daughter that you're either not mentioning or not addressing? Reply 1 to commenter 1, of course we had arguments in the past but not out of the ordinary. I believe her boyfriend is a bad influence. Reply 2 to commenter 1. This was my first thought, and if him being in her life has caused her to change her behavior so drastically, he probably already has plans for that money. So I wouldn't give it to her anyway because I expect it's going to end up going to waste instead of her education as intended. Reply 3 to commenter 1. It's fairly easy to send it directly to the college as a parent, bypassing the kid entirely. Commenter 2. I'm not going to weigh in on this because I feel there is not enough context for it, but OP, there's a good chance your daughter is being abused, actually manipulated. It sounds like the boyfriend is isolating her. Please keep an open mind that she might be a victim of abuse, manipulation. Reply 1 to commenter 2. I figure it's either what you said about the boyfriend or there are actual valid reasons for her to want to go no contact that OP isn't acknowledging. However, as a person who has no contact by choice with my mom, I want nothing to do with her money. Which is what has me leaning towards an manipulative boyfriend. Reply 2 to commenter 2. When I went no contact with my mom because she is manipulative and was trying to use financial help as manipulation when I moved out, there were a lot of other reasons too. I wanted nothing to do with her money or her. I didn't want her able to lord it over me. I don't see how if the daughter genuinely feels that way about her mom, she would want to have to deal with potential financial manipulation. I do feel like we don't have enough overall perspective, but I am leaning on the daughter being manipulated by the boyfriend. I would be afraid of causing further rift with my daughter, not knowing what the boyfriend's intentions are. I agree with others that maybe the ideal would be to allow the daughter space but to let her know that you care about her and will be there if she ever needs help. But you are only paying a semester at a time, directly to the college, and if her grades slip too much without showing improvement, then funding gets pulled. No forcing contact, just making sure finances go to the right place. I definitely wasn't trustworthy when it came to financial decisions when I was fresh into college. Commenter 3 has 14,000 upvotes. No contact would mean no financial contact too. Why is your daughter so surprised that you'd financially cut her off when she cuts contact with you? Reply 1 to commenter 3. I have this feeling the new boyfriend is stupid enough to think OP is going to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars to the daughter to pay for a full college degree. Money that I'm sure he has plans for, and it's not the daughter's tuition and board. Commenter 4. LOL. She's either dependent on you or she's not. She can't have both. Reply to commenter 4. Seriously, the audacity. Make adult decisions and live with adult consequences. Commenter 5. Nope. If she stops acting as your child, she needs consequences. Save it for your grandkids. Now to the next story. Story 2. My dad stole my college scholarship and threatened suicide if I forced him to pay back. Too frustrated and go through the roof, I told him go ahead. Original post. For context, I am currently a college freshman. I am on a full ride to my university. Every semester, I get a check sent to my house to pay off my housing costs, which is about $9,000. My unemployed father got evicted from my old address because he wasn't paying rent, so my family started living in a hotel. I was questioning how they were paying for the hotel, considering it was $150 a night. Turns out, my father used my college check to cash out and pay for the hotel for 2 months. I begged him to pay off my college housing costs for 2 months straight. He lied to me, telling me that it was attached to some funds, which were hard to get out, very confusing. But keep in mind I have absolutely zero financial literacy and my father never went into depth. I brushed it off, hoping that everything would work for the best. My college housing gave my father a deadline to pay off housing costs, November 1st. I was stressed for 2 months, unable to eat well, sleep, socialize, etc. If my dad doesn't pay it off, I may or may not have to drop out. When the deadline hit, I called my dad and asked him why he hadn't paid off my housing costs. He finally revealed that he used the check on the hotel we were living in. I was furious and I started interrogating him like a prosecutor. He blamed the family for being responsible for using my college money, not himself, and also blamed me. He lent me allowance money for 2 months, telling me that it was from my relatives when it was actually from my $9,000 housing check. I asked him why he would do this and he said that he didn't want to stress me out. I cried, telling him I worked way too hard in high school for me to drop out. I said that he owed me an apology 3 times over the phone, but he refused because he thought he had done nothing wrong since he was providing for the family. I asked him again, and he said sorry in a mocking voice. I told him that he was full of shit, and he started saying that he wants to put a gun to his head and kill himself, and it will all be on me. This is not the first time he has done that. I told him to do it, and I hung up. My mom called me, and I informed her about the situation. She told me to apologize to my dad, and I told her, as psychotic as I may sound, I have no remorse, especially after what he did. My mom threatened to disown me, but I somehow mended things with them for 3 weeks. It is currently Thanksgiving break, and my father still didn't pay off my check, and he said that he would get money Saturday to pay it off. My mom told me again to apologize to him after he paid my housing costs, and I said I would avoid conflict. But I think I'm way too stubborn to apologize, especially because I genuinely think I have nothing to be sorry for. My dad never fully apologized and made a joke out of me to the family. Relevant comments. Depressed wizard? Whose name was on the check? Sounds like fraud to me if your name is on that check. OP. I'm honestly not sure because I never physically saw the check. All I know is that it was mailed to my old address, and my neighbor gave the check to my father, who proceeded to cash it out. Character Seaweed 99, your father stole your mail and somehow cashed the check. That sounds like a federal crime to me. Get an appointment with student accounts at your university and explain what happened. Your school may have emergency bursaries or loans that will help out. Either way, ask them to send your mail somewhere safer. Can you get a post office box affordably? Or ask them to hold the check for you to pick it up. Open an account on your own, with neither parent as co-account holder. I'm sorry this is happening to you. I would love to, but there's also a huge part that I left out regarding this situation. My mother is an illegal immigrant, and if my dad goes to jail or gets charged, then she would have to go back to her country. I did threaten my dad with this, but my mother said that she would flat out disown me if I did. I also have little siblings too, so I would not like for them to have to take the fall for this. I think I will contact the school and ask them to put the mail somewhere safer, probably my dorm address. Burner suplex. Is your dad unemployed because he can't find a job or because he doesn't feel like working? Either way, stealing educational funds from his child isn't providing for the family. Definitely talk to someone with the school and change where that check is sent. It is on your parents to provide for their family, not on you, and definitely not on the school. OOP. He's been unemployed for over 25 years, and it's basically because he doesn't want to work. He has been leeching money from other people all my life. Muzukashi Kyoki. If your dad is legal but your mom is an illegal immigrant, then they must not be married. Usually, the act of him marrying her would make her a citizen by marriage. So, did they never get married? If he wants to avoid her getting deported, he should marry her. That's on them, not you. Sounds like your dad abuses everyone he is with. OOP. They never got married for some reason. I think it's his way to keep her wrapped around his finger. Update. 2.5 months later. Editor's note. Edited out the first part from the update as it is a rehash of the original post. First and foremost, immediately after this happened, I managed to get a separate debit card without my parents knowing. I don't have a job now, but I'm looking to get one later on in the semester. I didn't go to the financial aid center because my dad somehow managed to pay me back. I'm going under the assumption that it's through my grandmother's social security checks. Last December, after weeks of calling my father to make up for my scholarship money and pay me back, he finally sent me a check for $9,000. The check came in my dorm mail around midnight. I was asleep by then, and my dad was spam calling my phone to tell me it was in the mail. I didn't call him back until 1 in the afternoon because I had an exam that day. He started cursing at me, telling me how he couldn't sleep all night because I didn't answer my phone. I talked back and said, "The stress you put me through for 3 months by lying about my scholarship check is nothing compared to the stress you went through for a day." He started insulting me in every way possible, telling me that I was spoiled. I swore, "Are you fucking serious?" And he hung up. Moments later, my dad made my mom call me because he didn't want to argue with me. She screamed at me, saying that I should always have respect for him as a father and that I should apologize for swearing. I said that yes, I did swear at him, but he did too, calling me a bunch of slurs and whatnot. She also accused me of purposely ignoring them when I made it clear several times that I was asleep and I had an exam at 9 in the morning, hence not calling them at midnight. I told her that we shouldn't even have this talk because he was clearly in the wrong in this entire situation and every other kid would have gone to the financial aid center and my dad would have gotten in trouble. My mom misunderstood me for saying that I was going to report my dad. She had a mental breakdown and hung up. Moments later, my dad called and told me to go ahead and report him because I would be going to jail instead of him because he sent me some of the money from the check, which is bullshit. I called him out on his bullshit, and he said that he was permanently severing ties so I could learn my lesson. He hung up. I didn't call them for a week until I realized that I didn't have a place to stay for winter break. My dorm closed. I swallowed my pride and called them back to apologize. They said they'd accept me back to the family. This honestly still keeps me up at night, but I literally didn't have a choice but to stay with them over break. Over break, they've noticed that I'm way more cold and distant towards them, and they still wonder why. Luckily, I got the $9,000 check from my university to pay for this semester's housing fees. The best thing that came out of this is that I ended up reconnecting with my estranged sister, 25F. Long story short, my father financially abused my sister for years, maxing out her credit cards and leaving her $20,000 in debt. They cut all ties a year ago after my sister started dating a guy they didn't approve of. When I was on good terms with them, they painted her as the bad guy, telling me that she betrayed them by choosing her boyfriend over the entire family. I also didn't know that my dad financially abused her. Turns out she was in the same situation I was in and ended up dropping out because my dad didn't let her take out a student loan. I talked to my sister, and she said that she was honestly glad that she severed ties with them because she's finally financially independent, even if she's not financially stable. We're closer than ever, and I probably consider her as a shoulder to lean on. Mentally, I'm really not doing well. I'm generally stoic, but this is taking a hard emotional toll on me because my family was my world. Before college, I always knew my father was insane, but my mother was my ride or die. I told her everything. I helped her through her marital problems. She told me everything, and the fact that she chose my abusive, unemployed father, the man that she always talked about wanting to divorce, over her daughter is heartbreaking. She still expects me to be her armchair therapist, and she told me she wants me to act like how I did before. I told her over break that no matter what she does, she will never mend back the trust I had for her then. And my father, despite his flaws, I never expected him to use my check. He put such a huge emphasis on education and told me he wanted me to have the life he never had. And knowing he would sacrifice my education just so he could live in a fancy $150 hotel is very disheartening. Recently, I've been very isolated, I still talk to a few people, my grades are falling, and I haven't been eating or sleeping well. Maybe this situation should be a wake-up call for me, but I've come to the point where I'm completely apathetic about everything. I refrain from drugs thankfully, but even so, I feel like my life is on autopilot. Relevant comments, Old Afternoon 2459, lock your credit. Get a P.O. box. Make sure you have your legal documents. Oopie. If my dad gives me my legal documents. Top comments me or oh my oh. The best thing you can do for yourself is to complete your education. Stay focused on school and strive to do your best. Make friends and maintain contact with your sister. Also, seek out counseling at your school. They can help you deal with your family issues. New update. As you may or may not know, I made 2 posts several months ago about my father using up my college money. I also want to clear up some confusion about the posts. My parents are religiously married through the Catholic Church in another country, but they never got legally married because my dad doesn't want my mother to get a green card. And yes, in some colleges like mine, the broken education system in America still use checks, but most people use direct deposit. I am glad to say that he no longer has access to my finances and I am in low contact with them. Thanks to the advice of this subreddit, I got my social security card and other documents months before I left for college. I also managed to get my first job. I distanced myself from my parents, and I took a lot of time to reflect on them and their actions. They also distanced themselves from me after I finally put my foot down and refused to give them financial assistance. They said that I was self-absorbed, and once again my father told me he would kill himself if I didn't help him. And this time, instead of telling him to off himself, I told him that's a decision he would make, and I can't be responsible for it. I realized no matter what I do, they'll never change. They will always be the type of people to financially leech off of others using their suicide threats and weaponizing self-pity, but they're too emotionally stunted to see the faults of that. Their psyche is so twisted, and I spent a lot of time mourning for the parents I never had. They were never meant to be parents, but they're also people. Sometimes people like them exist. As for my mother, she completely turned her back on me and said that I was a TV villain for not giving my father the money he deserved for raising me and my siblings. I told her he was never emotionally present as a father, and neither was she. Not just from the suicide threats, but also by being a threat to our well-being. She used to treat me as a friend and therapist, but rarely as a daughter. She used me to complain about the emotional and mental abuse my dad inflicted on her. But at the same time, she was also the person to turn her back on me in a blink of an eye, if it meant protecting my father's feelings and making him happy. Sometimes, she went as far as to attack me or my siblings if we did anything to make him cross. I guess I still have a lot of pity for her considering that she is an illegal immigrant in an abusive situation, but it doesn't outweigh the damage. It was impossible to communicate with her since he was her own little world. I don't think she really loved me or saw me as a person or a child, just an outlet for her emotional dysfunction. Recently, my mother called me and lied about my dad being ill so they could rake a couple of bucks from me again. I told them to find their own source of money and hung up. Needless to say, I'm happier. I'm surrounded with good and caring people, my grades aren't great but better, and I'm finally in a good place right now. In the end, everything's gonna be alright. And even if it's not the end. Relevant comments, has OP got some or all the money back yet? OP. I got some of it back through a family friend. I'm working my ass off to make up for the remaining sum of money. OP needs to make sure her parents are not stealing her younger siblings' money for their benefits. OP. My biggest fear in the future is that my parents will use my younger siblings for their benefit and leech off of them. From what I know, that's pretty much still happening with my older siblings. Why didn't OOP's older siblings have gone no contacts with the parents? OOP. I don't really want to speak for them, but I think part of it is out of pity and sympathy for my mother. Their biological mother abandoned them, and my mom practically raised them as her own alone for 5 years while my dad was doing drugs and philandering on the other side of the planet. All 3 of us have told her at one point to leave our father, but she doesn't want to. That and because of my 2 younger siblings. If it weren't for them, they would have gone NC with my dad a long time ago.